Will Rogers had a remarkable talent for throwing three lassos at once, but even his skills couldn't shield him from the tragic fate that ultimately claimed his life. Once a cherished American icon known for his charming on-screen charisma, the image of Will was forever altered when the details of his untimely death emerged. We'll dive deeper into that. Will began his journey as a cowboy, captivating audiences with his rope tricks on the vaudeville stage. However, it was his down-to-earth commentary and relatable humor that truly won over crowds. Before long, he was writing columns for the New York Times, gracing Broadway stages, and starring in Hollywood films. His rapid ascent to fame only made his sudden death harder to understand. Born on November 4, 1879 in Oklahoma, Will Rogers was the son of Clement Van Rogers and Mary America Shrimshire, both of whom had Cherokee roots. His father served as an attorney and judge for the Cherokee Nation, while Will felt a stronger connection to his easygoing mother. This created a conflict with his father, who had grand aspirations for his son. Tragedy struck the family when Will was just 10 years old. His mother tragically succumbed to amoebic dysentery, leaving him to navigate life without her support during his father's relentless pursuit for success. Despite his father's wishes for him to pursue a business career, Will had other dreams and dropped out of school in the 10th grade. Academics didn't capture Will's interest. Instead, he was passionate about the cowboy lifestyle. Determined to pursue this path, he began performing in rodeos at the age of 20. After 2 years of struggling, he and a friend hatched an ambitious plan to travel to Argentina and become gauchos. Unfortunately, the venture turned out to be a financial flop, and within 5 months, they were broke. Parting ways with his friend, Will didn't give up. Instead, he set sail for South Africa. This decision proved to be a turning point. In South Africa, Will leveraged his rodeo skills and found success with Texas Jack's Wild West Circus show, where he performed as the Cherokee Kid. His journey then took him to Australia, where he joined another circus. By 1904, it was time to return to America. Although he knew his father would disapprove of his unconventional career, Will was resolute in his ambition to become a rodeo star, willing to risk everything to achieve his dreams. After perfecting his skills across various stages worldwide, Will was ready to make his mark. He just needed a moment to shine. That moment arrived during a performance at Madison Square Garden when a steer broke loose and charged into the audience. Faced with a choice between saving himself or becoming a hero, Will opted for heroism. He roped the steer, sending the crowd into a frenzy. Almost overnight, he found himself gracing the front page of newspapers, and soon, shows were eager to feature the Cherokee Kid. Just as his career was taking off, his romantic life took an unexpected turn. In 1906, Will fell head over heels for Betty Blake and planned to propose. She admired his kind nature but was hesitant about his unstable career in show business. She turned him down, prompting Will to realize that if he wanted to win her heart, he needed to change his ways. He ultimately decided that his love for Blake outweighed his passion for the spotlight. Back on one knee, he promised her that if she accepted his proposal, he would leave show business behind and settle down in Oklahoma. Impressed by his commitment, Blake said yes. However, Blake was in for a surprise. They tied the knot on November 25, 1908, and while Will intended to leave the stage behind, he had one last show booked in New York. They turned this trip into their honeymoon, and during this performance, Blake experienced her husband's talent for the first time and witnessed the flood of job offers he received. This revelation led her to fully support his career. Meanwhile, Will had been at odds with his father, who viewed his son's career changes as directionless. However, as Will began to find success performing regularly in New York, the two started to reconcile. Tragically, in 1911, his father passed away, missing the incredible journey that lay ahead for Will. Soon after, Will received an offer to perform on Broadway. His debut was in Wall Street Girl, where he surprised the upscale audience by showcasing his rope tricks between acts. One day, his cowboy antics caught the attention of Florenz Ziegfeld, who invited him to star in his Berlin show as a cowboy with a pony. Initially hesitant about a show that depended on humor, Will was swayed by the lucrative offer and joined Ziegfeld's midnight frolic. Determined to inject humor into his act, he faced a daunting challenge. His opening line, "Well, what shall I talk about? I ain't got anything funny to say. All I know is what I read in the papers," was hardly the best way to kick off a performance. Facing a tough crowd as a seemingly unfunny cowboy, Will turned the situation around by embracing his self-deprecating humor. He portrayed the everyman and cleverly critiqued the wealthy, a risky move given the audience's affluence, but they adored his simple cowboy charm. His slow, drawn-out Western drawl resonated with the urban East Coast audience, enhancing his appeal. His success soon led him from the midnight show to the prestigious Ziegfeld Follies. At one performance, he spotted then-President Woodrow Wilson in the audience and decided to take a bold risk by ad-libbing a humorous critique of Wilson's policies. Thankfully, the president appreciated the joke, and so did the New York Times, which likened Will to Aristophanes, the ancient Greek master of comedy, for his ability to speak truth to power. This acclaim propelled Will's career into an exciting new chapter. Will Rogers kicked off his film career with a silent Western titled Laughing Bill Hyde, produced by Samuel Goldwyn. Interestingly, despite its Western theme, the film was shot in New Jersey. Audiences flocked to theaters to catch a glimpse of Will, but unfortunately no copies of the film have survived. Will discovered a passion for filmmaking and felt compelled to take a significant leap. In the early 1920s, as the film industry migrated westward to Hollywood, he decided to follow suit. Luckily for him, it wasn't a financial gamble. Samuel Goldwyn had significantly increased his earnings from the Follies. With his newfound wealth, Will bought a ranch and launched his own production company. However, he faced an unexpected challenge. While performing in the Follies, he had built a reputation as a witty wordsmith, but the silent film era posed a barrier to his expression. Although he attempted to write the dialogue cards for his films, it never felt sufficient. After a string of silent movies, he abruptly stepped away from the industry. Just as he began to doubt his decision to move to Hollywood, tragedy struck. Taking a break from films to focus on family, Will faced the heartbreaking loss of his 2-year-old son Fred to diphtheria, a disease that was still deadly at the time. The family was shattered, and Will needed to channel his grief into something productive. It was during this period that he unearthed a hidden talent, writing. Despite not finishing high school, Will found he had a knack for writing and began contributing regularly to the New York Times. His sharp insights resonated with the public, leading to his columns being featured in over 50 newspapers nationwide. His popularity soared, and Henry Louis Mencken even dubbed him the most dangerous man alive for his candid critiques of politicians. By 1926, Will had a column called Will Rogers Says, which captivated around 40 million readers. His messages often revolved around neighborliness and advised Americans to steer clear of foreign entanglements. Recognizing his expertise in international affairs, the Saturday Evening Post decided to send him on an all-expenses-paid tour of Europe in exchange for a few articles. During this journey, he traveled from one capital to another, engaging with everyday citizens and influential figures alike. Upon returning, Will reflected on his experiences and reached a troubling conclusion. A significant conflict loomed over Europe and the world. He foresaw the impending World War II, although he couldn't fully grasp the extent of his prediction. He urged America to avoid European conflicts for its own safety, a piece of advice that, as history shows, went unheeded, even as the nation placed immense trust in his insights. Will Rogers was a figure who commanded deep trust among Americans, so much so that he became woven into the fabric of the education system. Some teachers even went so far as to take their students out of class to watch his movies. It seemed like everyone in the U.S. held him in high regard. However, the perception of Will shifted outside the country. British film critic David Thompson criticized him, suggesting that his viewpoints were inflexible and that he allowed Americans to cling to their biases. What really irked his critics was Will's knack for staying neutral in a polarized political landscape. In 1932, he backed Democrat Franklin Delano Roosevelt, but just 8 years earlier, he had supported Republican Calvin Coolidge. He had even been a key speaker at both Republican and Democratic conventions. His nonpartisan approach continued when he humorously decided to run for president himself. Life magazine encouraged this whimsical idea by establishing a political party just for him, the Anti-Bunk Party, hoping that he would avoid the empty rhetoric typical of politicians, dubbing him the bunkus candidate. While his presidential bid was largely a tongue-in-cheek endeavor, it offered valuable lessons for future politicians. He once expressed a hope that voters would prioritize dignity over showmanship when selecting a candidate. Will enjoyed stirring the pot in America, but a new technological wave was about to change the course of his career. With the rise of talkies, Will finally got his wish. He could star in films where audiences could hear him speak. However, he had a unique perspective on movies. To him, they were merely another platform to showcase his personality. He refused to wear makeup and stayed true to himself, much to the chagrin of some writers. Will didn't just play roles. He infused his own beliefs into the films, often ad-libbing lines that likely left his co-stars scrambling to keep up. On one memorable Oscar night, Will Rogers found himself in a bit of a pickle due to his spontaneous nature. While presenting the Best Director award at the 1934 Oscars, he decided to infuse his charming personality into the moment. Instead of formally announcing the winner, he casually called out, inviting Frank Capra to come up. However, Capra, thinking he was the recipient, started making his way down the aisle, only to realize Will was actually referring to Frank Lloyd. Despite this mix-up, Will remained beloved by both America and Hollywood. Remarkably, just a year later, he was voted the most popular man in Hollywood. The admiration for Will went even further when he was briefly named the honorary mayor of Beverly Hills. However, this title was short-lived, as it turned out that California law didn't recognize honorary mayors. Will took it all in stride, humorously noting that he wasn't the first mayor to be removed from office. Will had a deep passion for aviation, often using his newspaper columns to advocate for the safety and convenience of air travel. He was friends with aviation pioneers like Charles Lindbergh, who made history with his non-stop flight from New York to Paris, and pilot Wiley Post. Tragically, this friendship would lead to disaster. In 1935, Post was preparing to establish a flight route between Washington State and Russia, and Will decided to join him as far as Alaska to gather material for his column. Unbeknownst to them, a tragedy loomed ahead. Post had equipped his plane with floats for landing on water, and they successfully touched down in Fairbanks, Alaska. The next leg of their journey was to Point Barrow, the northernmost point in the U.S. However, on August 15, 1935, just 20 miles from their destination, they encountered severe weather that disoriented them. In a desperate move, they made an unscheduled landing in a lagoon to ask for directions. After getting their bearings, they prepared to take off again. As they attempted to leave, Post discovered that the engine had inexplicably failed. The plane plunged back into the lagoon, crashing and flipping upside down, resulting in the immediate deaths of both Will and Post. The nation was left reeling, eager to understand the cause of the accident. Speculation arose, with some blaming the floats on the plane, and others suggesting that Post had ignored crucial advice regarding the generator and weather conditions. Regardless of the cause, Will fans mourned his untimely passing. Fortunately, just a day before this tragic journey, Will had signed a deal for 10 films with 20th Century Fox. He had already completed 2, Steamboat Round the Bend and In Old Kentucky, which were released posthumously. However, producers decided to change the ending of Steamboat Round the Bend, where Will waves goodbye, fearing it would feel too personal, and leave audiences in tears. Will was laid to rest in Los Angeles, but his wife, Betty, felt that a more fitting memorial was needed for someone of his stature. She arranged for a memorial to be built in Claremore, Oklahoma, which was dedicated by President Franklin Roosevelt. In 1944, Will's body was moved there, and astonishingly, Betty passed away shortly after, as if she had been waiting for her husband to finally be at rest. After Will's death, America seemed determined to keep his memory alive. The U.S. Post Office honored him with 2 commemorative stamps, and a turnpike was named after him. The Will Rogers Memorial drew tourists eager to purchase memorabilia, and even in the digital age, he was celebrated with a Google Doodle on his 140th birthday in 2019. Amidst all this, one of Will's proudest achievements was earning a spot in the Guinness Book of World Records for simultaneously lassoing a horse, its rider, and all 4 legs. This remarkable feat surely made writing for the New York Times seem easy by comparison. If you enjoyed these tales, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. Stay tuned for more incredible stories coming your way soon. Thanks for joining us today, and see you next time.